Rockford. My name is Sammy Larson.
And I'm Allie Kinstall. Thank you for tuning in to Our Town, Community in Crisis.
Today, we will cover the progression of the PFAS contamination
And give some insight into the health effects PFAS causes.
Wolverine has also made steps to correct matters. Touching base, we discovered they've been working with the Department of Environmental Quality to find a solution.
Yes, Wolverine has been doing a lot to correct mistakes, but it makes me wonder, with the development of new technology, there is more discoveries, both good and bad. Why would it take so long to discover this major contaminant?
Well, Wolverine first started a dump in the late 1950s to early 1960s.
And what were they dumping?
Wolverine had just introduced their hush puppies, so they dumped the liquid waste from their factory.
And to give a little more insight into the history and journey of PFAS, you did a story following the timeline, right?
I did, and it's really helped me understand this whole predicament.
PFAS, a broad group of perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances that are a group of synthetic chemicals which have been in use since the 1940s. PFAS is an important part of the consumer product. It's used in things such as cookware, pizza boxes, and stain repellents. However, there is no place for PFAS in water, specifically Michigan's water. In June 2011, the citizens petitioned the United States Environmental Protection Agency under the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act to perform a preliminary assessment of the site. The preliminary assessment was completed in June 2012, and the United States Environmental Protection Agency referred to the site of EGLE for further investigation. The source of this current issue of PFAS water contamination revolves around one local company very prominent in the Rockford community, Wolverine. Their tannery operated for over 100 years before operations ceased in 2009. There are investigations happening of the tannery pollution found in the Rockford area. Wolverine conducted additional investigations in 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2016 to better define the extent of contamination. Buried hides and leather scraps were discovered during these investigations. Wolverine sampled groundwater and surface water for PFAS in the summer and fall of 2017. PFOA and PFOS were detected in the groundwater and surface water at up to 49,000 pints per trillion and 12 pints per trillion. Overall, the total tested PFAS detected in the water was up to 532,399 pints per trillion. January through April of 2018, Wolverine installed additional on-site monitoring wells at the tannery site on Thursday, July 26, 2018. Test results showed the water system in Parchment to be a total of 1,600 pints per trillion levels of PFAS. As the year goes on, Wolverine is still trying their best to fund investigations and cleanups in an attempt to resolve the PFAS contamination, especially the Rockford area. And as for the PFAS levels, they continue to decrease, bettering the community's health as well as the environment. This has been Sammy Larson with Beyond the Rock, signing off.
I've lived in Kent County for the majority of my life, so hearing the history and the progression of the PFAS has definitely instilled some fear into me.
Yeah, I've lived in Kent County most of my life as well, and I can agree that the feeling of not knowing the side effects of drinking the contaminated water is scary.
The Department of Health has been busy trying to research just how harmful this powerful chemical is.
I know that a lot of government programs are involved in the research and cleanup.
Seeing how far the contaminated water has spread, Beyond the Rock producer Ramey Fiveash became curious about the health effects and decided to contact some of these government programs to hear the professional opinions.
Water. It sustains all walks of life. Most don't realize just how much we use until it becomes threatened.
This is something where you drove down the street and you saw pretty forest and beautiful houses, and you never would have known that this issue could be there.
Understand the risk to public health and what those direct associations might be.
The toxicologists and doctors and epidemiologists and those folks are able to associate PFAS with certain health conditions.
There are some strong correlations with kidney and liver, thyroid issues, some cholesterol issues.
We know that it bioaccumulates in your blood, and that can be passed from a mother to her baby through breastfeeding and the breast milk.
The health side of PFAS is still being examined and monitored, along with how it progresses.
you make a cake with eggs from a chicken, or, they're still doing a lot of research of how PFAS is manifesting and showing up in our food chain.
Now in my household, we have to have Culligan water. We can't drink out of the sinks and stuff.
The local and state and federal health departments have been doing exposure assessment to understand the level of PFAS in people's blood.
We tested negative for it, but they still want us to drink out of the Culligan water just in case anything else changes.
I think it's really brought it close to home to people.
It was kind of scary.
This isn't just something that affects, people who live near a factory, or people who are in city areas where you drive by, you see the gas stations, you see the manufacturing facilities.
In order to prevent families from being exposed to PFAS, government programs have come together to find a solution.
They were going to run city water out to the places where that originally have well water, so then that way we can drink out of our faucets and stuff instead of having to drink Culligan water for the rest of our lives.
It's still being developed. There's still a lot of information out there and research being done across the country to try to understand that relationship between PFAS and health.
It's important that we don't do things that can affect future generations, that they will have to find out the way we found out.
Hiding in plain sight, destroying health, and with no signs of stopping, government programs work night and day to find a solution. This has been Rami Fiveash with The Town in Crisis.
I'll bet that the main reason why this problem wasn't caught early on is because it's hard to track.
Agreed. On top of that, it's bioaccumulative, so it's not as if we can stop it at its starting point.
Wolverine has come up with a solution, and the DEQ is overseeing that the plans carry out.
After this commercial break, an EPA official and Rami Fiveash will join us in the studio to give us an update on the PFAS cleanup.
Water, a human necessity. There are 42 miles of Michigan's very own Rogue River. Rockford alone produced 256 million gallons in 2016. That is, just for a population of 147,651. In Michigan, there are 231 million gallons per day produced for 9,928 million people. America produces 76 billion gallons per day of water for a population of roughly 323 million. A world made up of 7 billion people and only 0.4% of drinkable water. You could say that every drop counts.
Thank you, Jeff, for joining me here in the studio today. I was wondering, what is Wolverine's plan for the cleanup?
So currently the cleanup that's being conducted is called a time critical action. That word, time critical action, is a little bit different than a cleanup per se. The time critical action are cleanup activities that are specific to dealing with immediate threats. And most, importantly right now, that is the material at or near the surface that contains chemicals or contaminants that people could actually touch or access to just by being near the property or on the property, kids digging in the soil. So those are the actions that are being addressed right now, those things that are at or near the surface that could cause potential harm in people given enough exposure and enough time.
And how is the EPA monitoring the progress?
So the way we're monitoring is the work that's being performed is that we're actually on site. EPA is on site overseeing the work that Wolverine's contractors are doing. I also have a technical consultant contractor that does oversight and documentation work. They're kind of like assist me by taking pictures, keeping notes of what happens, reviewing paperwork. As trucks leave the site, we review the manifests for those trucks to make sure everything's filled out correctly and basically track all the operations. In addition to that, EPA and the U.S. Coast Guard have an interagency agreement, and I actually have two members of the U.S. Coast Guard's Atlantic Strike Team on site that are helping me with doing an extra set of eyes to oversee the workers' health and safety, to make sure they're doing everything they said they would do in their work plans in regards to health and safety for themselves and also for the public, and to conduct additional air monitoring specifically along the border of the property to make sure that there's nothing leaving the site that people not associated with the project could be exposed to.
When did the cleanup process start?
Physical removal activities started this fall, late September. They started setting up the site and everything, but the whole process started about 2 years ago when sampling started and EPA ordered Wolverine to conduct extent of contamination surveys at both the former tannery property and their former landfill over on House Street, where they disposed of waste from the tannery for a number of years.
And by the Rogue, the cleanup is happening there. I saw it. When is that expected to be done or expected to be cleaned?
This phase of the cleanup, again, this is a time-critical action, and we're getting the stuff at or near the surface. That doesn't mean the entire property is being cleaned up. It does mean the stuff that's easy to access is being addressed. Those activities will go into this winter for some part, based on the pace that they're able to excavate and dispose of the soils off-site at an approved landfill. I'm guessing that it's going to be sometime between late January, late February before they actually get the excavation activities done. And because we're doing work in the winter and it's along the Rogue River, like you talked about, they're going to have to come back in the spring and do the actual restoration activities where they make it look like a riverbank again and do the aesthetic aspects of the project.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about the cleanup process of the EPA and Wolverine working together?
So what we're currently under is an administrative order by consent. Basically, the work they're performing right now, we've outlined based on the sampling that was done, that extent of contamination study, determined those areas where we need to get rid of those materials now, so it limits the ability for the public to be exposed to those chemicals or contaminants. And as I said before, there will be waste or contamination on both properties after this time critical action's done. And any further activities, the federal EPA and the state of Michigan, the EGLE, the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, are working together to figure out whose program is going to take the lead on making sure that any follow-up actions are done appropriately as well.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for coming into the studio today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Wolverine has been diligently working to correct their past mistakes.
North Kent Sewer Authority and other government programs have also worked with them to provide help with the cleanup.
Braden Evans went to a meeting that discussed the Wolverine cleanup action and how they are going to regulate it.
Thank you, Sammy. Recently, North Kent Sewer Authority discussed whether or not to involve themselves in the cleanup process. The issue being that if the NKSA aided in the cleanup and it goes wrong, it would result in a big controversy. But without the assistance of the NKSA, Wolverine would be sure to fail. For a bit more understanding, I attended the informational meeting. The North Kent Sewer Authority. Faced with a tough decision, should they aid Wolverine in the cleanup process to decontaminate the water used by many in northern Kent County?
Seems to me that's why this thing was built. And so yes, there's risk in it, but there's also risk in not doing anything.
The May 2nd meeting, in its majority, covered the long-lasting effects that the cleanup would have on the residents affected and the issues that could arise with helping Wolverine.
I would much rather go to the public if something happened. We say we shut it down, we were part of the solution, we shut it down because we found this, this, and this, we're taking care of it. When it's back, we're going to go back up and running. But we are taking care of this problem for the people that live in this community.
The meeting came to a close with an agreement. Before moving forward, a new contract would be written up that would match the guidelines set by the NKSA.
1, to protect North Kent from the cost or liability. 2, to ensure that if there are any discharge exceedances, it will be terminated immediately. 3, to ensure that the design of the treatment system makes sense and is proven to work. And 4, to ensure adequate monitoring and oversight. Those were kind of the overriding principles that I was using in drafting these terms.
And as for Wolverine's input, they really don't have much of a say.
When I was talking with the attorneys for Wolverine, we were not in a normal negotiation that I was in an enviable position because I have all the leverage. Because we can say, no, this is not something that we have to do.
As things sit at the current moment, it seems the NKSA will end up helping Wolverine out with the water cleanup, but nothing is certain until the next meeting. This has been Braden Evans with Beyond the Rock, signing off.
There are over 170 types of fish that live in the Great Lakes. Every day, we pollute our waters with trash, road salts, pesticide, and auto chemicals. You wouldn't let your fish live in this water.
The contract between the two is uncertain at this time, but it would appear as though NKSA will aid in the cleanup.
With the developments and research, it becomes easier to contain this rapidly spreading chemical.
This crisis makes the community realize just how important water is.
And how much we use.
It's important to be aware of the environment and how we impact it. Even the smallest of things can turn into the biggest problems.
Once again, I'm Allie Kinstel.
And I'm Sammy Larson. This has been Our Town Community in Crisis.